Welcome. Today we'll be looking at the short story Mandarins by Ryunosuke Akutagawa. Ryunosuke Akutagawa was dubbed the father of the short story in Japan, so I feel that it is only fair to start off with one of his short stories on this channel. So, Akutagawa is famously known for committing suicide in his mid-30s as well due to his mental breakdown that he artistically portrayed in his memoirs, Life of a Fool. So, this short story was written in 1919, around the time that Akutagawa began his career as an English professor in Tokyo, so it is fair to say that some of it may be based on true events, and he may place himself in our narrator, who remains nameless in this story. The story depicts a gloomy salaryman on his daily commute to Tokyo. On his train ride, a country girl, clearly on the wrong carriage, disrupts their narrator's commute. He was the only one on the train, so he felt quite bothered by this girl's presence. During the train ride, the narrator tries to ignore the girl, but her existence alone disrupts his routine. That, although a tedious routine, gloomy and boring, as it may be seen, it is something that seems to truly belong to our narrator. At the climax of the story, the girl struggles to open the window so much that even he feels a bit of pity for her, yet he finds her presence and looks quite repulsive. Once the girl finally manages to open the window, she tosses out mandarin oranges to the children who have come to see her off to the big city. This out-of-the-ordinary experience causes our narrator to forget his reality for a brief moment and feel a bit of elateness. Akutagawa's gloomy display of a sailorman living a lifestyle that is new to Japanese people at this time shows the detachment that this is causing in society and modernization. The character is alienated and the audience is alienated. Soseki, in his novel And Then, that preceded this short story by about 10 years, displays a character in a train ride that says that Japan has nothing to truly be proud of. The character says that many Japanese use Mount Fuji as a monument of pride, yet that is something created by the natural world and not man itself. So therefore, it is not something that can truly be claimed. A modernist aim is to break away from tradition, and that is shown through various methods. So the story uses a lot of cinematism that is propagated by the use of colors. It really takes the story from a monochrome color scheme to a lens flare climax. We are going to focus on setting as a character. Japanese literature is very much about the nothing happening, and it is about what is happening in the background. So through his diction, Akutagawa crafts a cinematic effect. Right at the beginning, he begins the story by saying that evening was falling, one cloud covers winter's day. Right from that beginning, he's setting up that cinematic effect. He tells you that he was the only passenger in the carriage and that it was illuminated and the platform was darkening. As it is typical with Japanese literature, the background and setting are alive, but dead inside, seemingly, and act as a major supporting character. The narrator feels himself enveloped in the monochrome setting as he reflects on how it matches his own mood. The colors of the setting carry through the story as a major motif. Akutagawa believed that all good stories had a clear progression of events, thus carefully constructing this scheme. I want to primarily focus on light as a character, because again, we can look at setting as a character in itself, and Akutagawa uses light to really portray another character that has a very complex relationship with our narrator. And of course, that is light, and at the risk of sounding cliche, and how light plays a part in his life. At the very beginning, we're greeted with a falling evening and how his carriage was illuminated by a man-made, or artificial light in this case. When our narrator tries to read his newspaper, he says that the light from outside was eclipsed by the electric illumination within the carriage, and that artificial light that he has in his carriage is not even enough to light up the newspaper that he's trying to read. The metaphor, of course, in the newspaper that is filled with dark, gloomy stories, and we can clearly see that these are all negative news stories and happenings around our narrator. This further propagates the negativity in our narrator's life, and not even artificial light, or at least artificial light is useless around him at this time. So, of course, later in the story, we have our train going through a tunnel, typically a metaphorical situation. And at that time, the country girl was trying her best to open this window and bothering our narrator. Of course, she didn't know, she didn't seem to care, at least to our narrator. But we don't really know whether she even noticed him at all. He is, after all, surrounded by darkness. Once she does open the window, a large amount of soot comes inside the carriage and fills our narrator with darkness. He is enveloped and physically enveloped by this darkness, not only metaphorically speaking anymore. Of course, this does not last long because soon after leaving the tunnel, the country girl throws the mandarin oranges at the ones that came to see her off, and our narrator is suddenly filled with joy as he is warmed by the great ironic setting sun and the land of the rising sun. Our speaker's ennui and tedious life is shown to be forgotten for at least a moment in this setting sun. In the beginning of the story, we have the evening setting sun shown to not be enough for the narrator's world, so much so that artificial light tries to illuminate in futile efforts. The irony of a setting sun shining so brightly for a moment that almost seems to create chronostasis in our narrator's life leaves the reader with mixed feelings. We know the narrator felt some sort of happiness or something that was not what he was feeling before, but whether to be happy for him or feel sad for him is a bit up for debate. Both the reader and the narrator know that the sun will set, but at this moment, we are pushed to the cinematic briefness of the natural overcoming of artificial parts of life. The narrator, likely Akutagawa, seemed to be overwhelmed and destroyed by the modernity of our world. Look, it's been a very long time discussing this short story. It is part of a collection that is pretty well translated. If you're interested, I'll post a link down below for this one particular copy. Ideally, on this channel, I would like to analyze and discuss other Asian literature. Just anything in particular that you would like me to cover, do comment that down below. Or if you would like to know more about Akutagawa's life, I am considering making a video about just that by itself. Let me know what you want, and hopefully you enjoyed this one. Till next time.